Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this edition of The Inside on Equinox Television. I am Babli Jonathan. Many have observed that the Cameroon government has been managing the Anglophone crisis, struggling to find solution to the socio-political and security impasse rogging the two Anglophone regions of the country from the top, and have suggested that the solution to the problem is at the bottom. And so today, in this edition of the program, we're taking you deep into the root causes, into the origins of the Anglophone crisis. We'll equally take a look at the present situation, how it escalated to the present situation, and of course, the way forward, the way out of the socio-political impasse. In some few seconds, discover our guest. Thanks for joining us. Our guest in this edition of the program is Dr. Simon Munzy. He was one-time Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Ivory Coast. He is the founder of the Anglophone Cameroon Dialogue Forum. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You've been working on this crisis for quite a long time in the United Nations with the recent forum that you created, the Anglophone Cameroon Forum, and of course in other spheres you have been working on this issue. What are actually the root causes of this crisis which the country is experiencing today?
Well, I mean, as you say, I have taken an interest in this matter for more than 25 years now, because I participated in the technical committee that drafted, or that was set up by the tripartite in 1991 to draw up a new constitution, and this matter featured very much amongst our concerns at the time. You also know that I was one of the three people who convened the first and the second All-Anglophone Conference in Buea in 1993 and the second in Bamenda in 1994. And in many other ways, I have participated with other people in conveying the fact all these years that there was indeed an Anglophone problem. And if you ask me what are the root causes of the problem, I think for your viewers to understand that, we need to remind ourselves of certain aspects of the history of colonization and decolonization of our country. God did not create a country which he called Cameroon. Cameroon as a country is a construct of colonial powers. We had our territories, we had our people, but those territories and those people were never called Cameroon until colonialists gave the territory the name Cameroon, which derives, as you know, from the Portuguese word for prawns. And since then, the division of our territory amongst colonial powers, first all of it to the Germans, and then between the Germans and between the British and the French, was again the act of colonial powers. Now, when you put yourself in that context, what did we have? With the division of the territory between France and Great Britain, first under the League of Nations and subsequently under the United Nations, these two Western powers had the responsibility, each of them, to develop its zone towards and prepare it for self-government or independence. That is what, for example, Article 76B of the United Nations Charter said. That was their responsibility. And therefore, it was the same responsibility for each of the administering authorities in each of the two territories. Now, it turns out that shortly before they acceded to self-government, the part under French trusteeship, was granted full independence on the 1st of January 1960.
And the real issues notably concerning the former Southern Cameroons actually started in 1961.
Well, I suppose you could say that because normally in application of that same Article 76B of the UN Charter, Southern Cameroons should have acceded to independence as well, as a separate state. But instead of that, the administering power, the United Kingdom, had recommended to the United Nations that Southern Cameroons was not viable to stand as a separate country. And persuaded the United Nations to grant, if you like, Southern Cameroon's independence on the basis of its joining another independent state. Another independent state. And in the particular instance, it was Southern Cameroonians were given a choice to join either the Federation of Nigeria or the Republic of Cameroon that had just become independent on the 1st of January 1960.
And many have attributed the anger that has exploded today, leading to the current situation in the two Anglophone regions, to the fact that the United Nations gave the Anglophone Cameroonians just two options, and the last option of becoming independent as a state without joining another was absent.
Indeed, I mean that, if you like, is the root of the situation that we are living today. There was no objective reason for the United Nations to deny Southern Cameroons as a territory the right to accede to full independence as a separate state, especially since the United Nations General Assembly's declaration adopted a resolution 1514 of the United Nations, adopted on the 14th of December 1960, which had to do with a declaration on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples, very clearly stated in paragraph 1 that the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. Is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations and is an impediment to the promotion of world peace and cooperation. And in Article 2 it said, all peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. But what is more, listen to this, paragraph 3, it said, inadequacy of political, economic, social, or educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying independence.
And that particular aspect was violated.
Indeed, it is astonishing that in the light of this declaration, Southern Cameroon was deprived of the opportunity of becoming a standalone independent state. However, it is interesting, and this we really must bear in mind, especially for those who are clamoring for the separation of the former Southern Cameroons,
independence
if you like, those who say that restoring the independence of the former Southern Cameroons. It's good to bear in mind that whereas what I have just read to you, the declaration of the declaration 1514 was adopted by the plenary meeting of the UN General Assembly on the 14th of December 1960, the following day, on the 15th of December 1960, the same General Assembly adopted Resolution 1541. And Resolution 1541, not to get too technical, basically indicated that, and this is contained in principle number 6, that a non-self-governing territory can be said to have reached a full measure of self-government by A, emergence as a sovereign independent state, B, free association with an independent state, or C, integration with an independent state. So you see, for the United Nations, as per this resolution, a state could become self-governing by integrating into another independent state. And that, incidentally, is what the United Kingdom recommended when it came to Southern Cameroons, that we had a choice between becoming independent by joining Nigeria or independent by joining La République du Cameroon.
And that sounds like a contradiction to the other resolution which indicated that a country could become independent without necessarily having to join another state.
No, it's all a matter of, these concepts can sometimes be confusing. Now, the key thing was for a territory to be self-governing, okay? And it was stated that a country can become self-governing when it has one of those three forms that I just indicated, either by standing alone as an independent, emerge as an independent country, a sovereign independent state, or associate freely with another independent, state, or integrate with an independent state. And so in the case of the Southern Cameroons, the United Nations limited us to the third option. Now, but having limited us to the third option, our people had to choose between joining Nigeria and joining La République. That is why we had the plebiscite of 11th February 1961. And that plebiscite, as we all know, went in favor of our joining La République. So,
while others joined Nigeria.
Yeah, so exactly. While Northern Cameroons decided to join Nigeria. So for the United Nations, our people on the 11th of February 1961 decided freely to gain independence by joining La République du Cameroon. And this is noted by the General Assembly of the United Nations when on the 21st of April 1961 it adopted a resolution which you would hear many of those who are clamoring for restoration of the independence of Southern Cameroons, they keep referring to it, Resolution 1608 of the 21st of April 1961. Now in that resolution, which has just 5 very short paragraphs, the United Nations General Assembly made very clear that they were acting based upon the choice that was made by the people of Southern Cameroons when they voted on the 11th of February to gain independence by joining La République du Cameroon.
That is the result of the plebiscite.
The result of the plebiscite. It was endorsed by, the results were endorsed by the General Assembly. The General Assembly considered that, and it's good to read this, that with respect to, it considered that it expressed, the General Assembly expressed its high appreciation of the work of the United Nations Plebiscite Commissioner for the Cameroons under the United Kingdom administration and his staff, endorses the results of the plebiscites, namely in the case of Southern Cameroon, that the people of Southern Cameroon have decided by a substantial majority to achieve independence by joining the independent Republic of Cameroon. And the General Assembly went on to add that this decision was made by the people of Southern Cameroon through democratic processes under the supervision of the United Nations, and therefore should be implemented immediately. The Assembly should be implemented immediately. The Assembly also noted that the people of Southern Cameroon had freely and secretly expressed their wishes with regard to their respective futures in accordance with General Assembly resolution, and so on and so forth. So the General Assembly of the United Nations fully endorsed
the results of the plebiscite.
Exactly.
But some have raised the point that there is no official document at the United Nations that can be qualified as the birth certificate or the marriage certificate of the former South and East Cameroons.
Yeah, I've heard that theory advanced. People even speak of us being in Jumba marriage since then.
Yes.
No, once again, we have to take ourselves to Resolution 1608 of the 21st of April, 1961. Remember that before this date, the government of Nigeria and the government of the Northern Cameroons and the United Kingdom had engaged discussions, negotiations as to what would happen, what would be the status of Northern Nigeria in the event of its joining, Northern Cameroon in the event of its joining the Federation of Nigeria. And what the parties agreed on was that Northern Cameroon would be integrated into the northern region of Nigeria. In those days, Nigeria had just three regions: the northern region, the eastern region, and the western region. And that within that northern region of Nigeria, Northern Cameroon would become a province. They later on named it the Sardauna province. Okay, so by the 21st of April 1961, all negotiations between the United Kingdom, Nigeria, and Northern Cameroon, with respect to Northern Cameroon joining Nigeria, had been completed. Consequently, the United Nations General Assembly decided that with respect to the Northern Cameroons, the trusteeship agreement will end, and therefore Northern Cameroons will achieve independence by joining Nigeria on the 1st of June, 1961. But with respect to Southern Cameroons, as at that date, 21st of April 1961, the negotiations were still going on between the government of Southern Cameroons, the United Kingdom, and the Republic of Cameroon. And so what the General Assembly did in this same resolution was, and that is paragraph 5 of the resolution, was to invite the administering authority, that is the United Kingdom, the government of the Southern Cameroons, and the Republic of Cameroon to initiate urgent discussions with a view to finalizing, the word is finalizing, before 1st October 1961, the arrangements by which the agreed and declared policies of the parties concerned would be implemented. In other words, these three parties had to pursue their discussions, their negotiations, to see, to conclude on the terms on which Southern Cameroons would integrate with Republic of Cameroon. And they did. That's what we had after this adoption of this resolution in April. In May, the parties met in Buea. In June, there was an all-party conference in Bamenda. In July, the parties met in Fumban. In August, the same parties met in Yaoundé, and so on. And the culminating point for all those meetings and discussions was the document that came to constitute the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, which entered into force on the 1st of October 1961.
Now, before all of these, you identified the first problem, the first cause, the first root cause of what is going on today in the Northwest and Southwest region as being the fact that the United Nations did not give the Southern Cameroonians the third choice, that of becoming independent as a separate state. That was the first problem. Now, after all of this happened, there has been other issues that have been happening along the line that have been further complicating and provoking the Southern Cameroonians. I want to say it that way.
Yes, of course. The problem, after all, if you like, ultimately the problem, as we are living it today, lies in the fact that the basis on which the joining occurred on the 1st of October 1961 was eroded, especially with the changeover from the federal structure to the unitary structure in 1972.
And then later to...
Because it has to be understood that the parties had indeed agreed that they were going to join on the basis of a federation of two equal states. To the extent that Republic of Cameroon, which until the between the 1st of January 1960 and the 1st of October 1961 was a sovereign independent state, ceased to exist as a sovereign independent state because of the negotiation and the agreement with Southern Cameroons, and became simply the federated state of East Cameroon in a new country called the Federal Republic of Cameroon. I don't know if you see the implications of this. Okay? Now, similarly, the territory of British Southern Cameroon, which by joining La République had just become independent, also ceased to exist as an independent state and became the federated state of West Cameroon. And the two together formed a new country called the Federal Republic of Cameroon.
And later the federal system was dissolved.
Exactly. So things should have remained that way. And if things had remained that way, we wouldn't have the problem today. We would have today a territory where we could describe as one nation, two systems.
Two federated states.
Exactly. One nation, two systems in everything. That was the intention. And so the real evil in this whole thing began when, under the auspices of the first president, President Hijo, the federal system was abolished and a unitary state was proclaimed. And since then, there has been the systematic erosion of the institutions, the practices, the procedures, the way of doing, the way of being, everything which Southern Cameroons brought into that union. And incrementally over the years, it has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse.
And it became clear.
It got to the point where the people cannot take it anymore.
And it became clear to Southern Cameroonians that this was an intentional plan to wipe off the Southern Cameroons that existed as a separate state with its own cultures, its own ways of doing things. When the system changed, or the name changed from the Federal Republic of Cameroon to the United Republic, and then later to the Republic of Cameroon.
Indeed, I mean, this is the heart of the problem. So the Anglophone problem is not all this talk about bilingualism and multiculturalism and living together and all of that. No. The problem fundamentally is that since 1972, progressively and with increasing intensity, the Southern Cameroons as a state, meaning a people with a territory, a population, a system, were constantly wiped out.
With things like discrimination
and domination,
non-respect of the basis of
annexation, assimilation, and all of that. So that today, if you go to the northwest and southwest, you feel it. You feel the sense of a takeover in every domain: economic, social, cultural. And the mere fact that this is done with the participation of Anglophones who are appointed to office does not change the reality. The reality is that over the years, the level of destruction of our institutions has got to the point that we can now say that they are virtually annihilated. The areas where there were some vestiges of that of our own system were indeed justice and education, and it is the attempt to completely to finalize the erosion of the systems even in those domains.
Some even talk of intellectual erosion. We have some Anglophones today who are in top positions of responsibility in this country who have denied, or who denied in the past, that the Anglophone problem was actually existing.
Of course, I mean, they would deny, and the reason why they deny is that, again, this is one area in which our own way of being was completely changed. In our system, your leaders, especially your political leaders, don't come to you through appointment. They come to you through being elected. That is why in the government in Buea, for example, for a person to be a minister in the government in Buea, you had first of all to have been elected as a parliamentarian in your constituency.
All right, okay? Doctor, we're going to take a short